At the end of each month, when you receive your bank statement, you'll need to reconcile that bank statement with the check register in Main Street. To do this, we're going to start by going to AP and then going into Reconcile Bank Statement. In this window here, you'll start out by picking the bank account that you're reconciling. So if you have savings and a checking account or multiple checking accounts, you'll want to pick the appropriate account. You'll want to put the date of the bank statement in, and then of course the ending balance on the bank statement for that account. Over to the right there, we have our service charge field. So if there was some sort of service charge that the bank charged you, you could add it in there. Now, if there were multiple service charges, those you might want to add by going in under the AP and going into the check register adjustment section. You would select the transaction date of that service charge, and then the general ledger account that you want that service charge to post to. And then the same thing further to the right there, the interest would be added in the same way. You could just put in the amount of the interest, the transaction date, and the general ledger account. Down in the bottom right corner there, you can see the opening balance. And because this is the first time we're doing the reconciliation, it's at 0. Obviously, as you move forward each month, the ending balance from the previous month would then be the opening balance of the current month. So you typically don't have to change that. Now, if for some reason that opening balance that's showing in there isn't the correct opening balance, you can type over it. It won't make any changes in the program anywhere else. It's just for this window. So you would just simply click into the opening balance field and type in what the opening balance needs to be, just like the ending balance. And again, you want to make sure that opening balance matches the opening balance on your bank statement. Otherwise, the reconciliation isn't going to work correctly. Now, this being the first time that we're doing our bank reconciliation, instead of what we would normally do by making sure that the opening balance matches our bank statement, we're actually leaving ours at 0 this time, because if you notice in the middle there, we've got our opening balance that we put in of what we set up the bank account with. So we would leave that at 0, and then we'll just go through and we'll check off everything that's on the bank statement that matches up with what we have in the system. Obviously, if there's items on your bank statement that are not in the system, you'll need to save what you're doing here in the reconciliation, go out of it, add those transactions in, come back into the bank reconciliation. And then once you've completed everything and gone through and marked everything off, obviously at the end, down at the bottom right corner there where it shows a difference, if everything matches up correctly, then the difference should show 0. You'll notice as we mark things off, we have the box that shows how many checks, how many deposits, and withdrawals and other deposits that we have marked off, and the totals of all those. And so we can go through and see where we might be off if we're not matching up in the difference column there to 0. Let's take a look at the main body of the reconciliation there. You can see you've got a column for any withdrawal amounts, deposit amounts, the check numbers, any reference information that's on any of those transactions, the actual transaction number. And that transaction number could be helpful, obviously, when you have things that are showing up that you're not sure what they are and you need to try and recall those. The type of transaction, and we can kind of go through what's there. So the S would stand for a service charge. All the D's are deposits. The O is just for the opening balance, so typically you won't have O's in there. C is for check, E is for EFT, and W is for withdrawals. Then you've got your date column and your payee column. And you can rearrange things. Typically, it's going to group everything together. So all your deposits are going to be grouped together. All your checks are going to be grouped together. And then from there, you can go, let's say in the date column, if you click right on the date header, you can change the order that the dates are in. And the same thing, so like in the transaction number field or the reference number field. And the more times you click, it'll put it in descending order, and then increasing order, and so there's different ways to do that. And you can even move the columns around. If you take your cursor and put it right on the column header and hold down your left mouse button, you can drag it to wherever you want it so that you can have the screen exactly like you want it. Then when you've completed your reconciliation, you'll choose Save. That's going to give you a choice of incomplete or complete. So if you're still working on it, you're going to leave it as incomplete, and then when you come back into the reconciliation, it'll come back to the one that you've been working on. Once you have completed the reconciliation, you just choose Complete and choose OK. And you'll see now that it shows that the reconciliation itself is closed. Right below that is the transaction number of the reconciliation. And then up at the top, the print button is available. So if you want to print a reconciliation statement, you can choose that, and it will print out your reconciliation that you've done, which I would definitely recommend to keep with your records. Now, occasionally what will happen is you made a mistake. Maybe you cleared a particular transaction because the dollar amount was the same, but it was the wrong transaction, or you had mistakenly closed the reconciliation and weren't done with it yet. You can go back to a reconciliation. However, if it's closed like this one is, you wouldn't be able to edit it. So you can reopen a reconciliation. So the one thing you'll need is that transaction number. So once you have that transaction number, you can go under Admin and reopen Bank Rec. You'll put in that transaction number and hit Enter, and then reopen. And now when you go back into your Reconcile bank statement, the transaction number 1 is now open again. Now, if you have more than one reconciliation that you've done, it's not going to come up to the same transaction that we just were working on like it did for us here, but you would just go to the search icon and you would either double click it to look through a list of all your reconciliations to find that one, or click on it once, type in the transaction number, and then click search again. Another thing to keep in mind is the difference at the bottom there obviously should show 0 if everything matches up. There may be certain situations where mistakes were made in the past, and so in order to correct those mistakes, you might have to clear some things out that really aren't on this current bank statement. As long as you understand what that difference is, and that difference is correct because of those corrections maybe that you've made, then you can save the reconciliation that way. The program will not do any kind of an adjustment to try and reconcile out that difference. So typically, again, you would not want there to be a difference, but if there is, and there's a reason for that, again, maybe there's some old transactions, the reconciliations weren't getting done properly in the past, and so there's some transactions that are still in there from the past that should have been cleared that weren't. My recommendation is just do the current month's reconciliation as it's supposed to be done, and then once you get to a 0 difference there and you're done with everything, then you could go ahead and check off those items, and then now the difference will be those items that you added in, but you know why that they're in there, and then save it that way. Or you could just simply do a reconciliation completely separate with just those items that you're wanting to clear off of there. So when you clear items here, all it's doing is making sure that in the check register they've been marked off as cleared, and taking them off of your future reconciliation. And then if you have worked on a reconciliation, maybe you're a little bit behind, you've got a couple months worth, after you've got your one reconciliation done and you've saved it, you're going to go ahead and just choose New. And now we would just start again. We would want to put in the statement date, the ending balance, and again, the opening balance will have carried forward from the previous reconciliation. And if for some reason it's not carrying forward properly, that's not the right number, just go ahead and change that to the correct number so that you can work on the statement and get the proper information in there.